For Thomas to deliver some important documents, but he'll be here shortly, I'm sure. So I'll just stretch this out till he gets here. Good evening, welcome to School of Architecture's Evening Lecture Series. I will remind you again before we start tonight. Week from Friday, Mikhail Redick from OASE Redick will be here. It's also the grad open house day, so everybody come bathed in nice clothes and it's a nice place to be, whatever. And the night before that, next Thursday the 6th, will be Francesco's Garofalo Fellowship opening. There should be drinks and maybe Francesco something great on that. Given that there are at least 4 UIC faculty-led offices in the Monadnock building, it's appropriate that we are the first to be able to welcome the founders of the Rotterdam-based office named Monadnock, Floris and Sander to Chicago. Apparently, and Sander had an extensive tour of the Monadnock building today, so we hope maybe they can find some office space there and relocate and sort of fully embrace the concept. We have our real estate agents looking into that. I think the division of labor tonight is that Joop will do the lecture and Sander will be on call for the Q&A. So make sure you have some questions in practice for tomorrow. Joop received his master's degree from the Rotterdamse Academie of Architecture, where since 2010 he has been the coordinator of the master's program. After working as a project architect at Rapp+Rapp in 2006, Joop co-founded Monadnock with Sander, who had left MVRDV the same year. Though Joop is a member of an informal group known as the Rats, Monadnock's projects such as Landmark, their tower for the town of Nieuwbergen, which was shortlisted for the 2017 Mies van der Rohe Prize, displays an equal affinity of combining the ordinary and the surreal that one would associate with American realism as much as European rationalism. As editor of the Dutch journal OASE since 2008, Joop co-edited many issues, including number 92 on codes and continuities, which in some ways you could say parallel to the work of Monadnock, looks to liberate the lessons of a shadow canon within modernity, an often less rhetorical tradition involved with material and technology, though one still invested in distilling an image of architecture. In this way, one might broadly characterize the work of Monadnock and other aligned practices of their generation as an alternative to the successes, and some might say excesses, associated with the 90s Super Dutch phenomenon, just as on this side of the Atlantic, one has witnessed a parallel generation pursue a more materially specific and representationally low-tech deviation away from the 90s triumph of digital informalism. One project of Monadnock is currently on display at the current show at the Graham Foundation. The show Spaces Without Drama, where Joop and Sander will lecture tomorrow night. And we will be happily able to see more of their work this fall at the Chicago Biennial, when we hope to welcome both of them back. Until then, please join me in welcoming Joop Floris for his first date with UIC.
Thank you, Bob. That was a very warm welcome. And thank you, Thomas, also for inviting us both. And indeed, this is the first time speaking here in the October room in UIC. And I'm going to talk about 5 themes that let's say relate to the work of our practice. And these are themes that keep us going when we are at work, and sometimes they even keep us awake during the night. I'm going to first start off with let's say a part which is, if you like, a bit more theoretical, and later on it will be a bit more light when I show the projects and more images, of course. Going to the links. This is our office in Rotterdam. It's the upper left unit with the flagpole. That's our unit. It's in an old warehouse. And ever since we are invited to give lectures, we start off with, it's a bit of a ritual, explaining why we name ourselves Monadnock. Now, being here in Chicago, I'm not going to elaborate very long on the Monadnock building because I assume that you are like super informed about this building. So I'll keep it very short. But of course, one reason is it's a type of mountain, it's a geological phenomenon of a mountain that appears because of the soft rock being washed away and the hard rock remaining there. And you have these types of mountains in several places in the world. But we only found out after seeing the Monadnock building, the Monadnock block in Chicago here, which we immediately completely adored and fell in love with. And it's of such an astonishing beauty that we decided to call ourselves Monadnock as an office. And not only that, there's more to it. You could say, yeah, we could also have named ourselves Reliance Architects or Rookery Architects or Fisher Architects, but we fell in love with this building, not the other ones, because there's an intriguing story to it. Actually, today we met Mr. Bill Donnell, the property owner of the Monadnock building, and you should want to invite him to give a lecture about the building because he knows everything about it. And I'm always a bit seduced to talk very long about the building, but the main thing, if I have to summarize it, is that the building carries one name and consists of two parts. And that actually brings us immediately to the first theme that I would like to talk about. And it's about the precedents. Because in our work, in our practice, we constantly, well, let's say, make use of these and in a very operational way, and they're very alive. I'm going to show you a bit what I mean with that. Let me first make clear that if I talk about precedents, we are architects that are interested in conventions, in tradition, and in history, and also in the current contemporary of architecture. We are not historians, and we admire, let's say, the booming area of Chicago, but we are not very nostalgic about it. We are especially intrigued by the architectural laboratory of this age, around 1880 to 1900, perhaps a bit earlier, perhaps a bit longer, but approximately this period in time. And what we find very intriguing is that there were architects coming from Europe or being trained in Europe with the Beaux-Arts education in Paris, and they saw themselves confronted with new questions. So they were trained with making classical temples in a way, and then had to make very huge boxes, and they applied their classical vocabulary to these boxes, and that means something of a reinvention of architectural vocabulary. And that's actually what is interesting for us. I think instead of making a cut, conventions are redefined, you could say. And so when we talk about this era in Chicago, we mainly find interests whose validity and strength haven't dimmed over the years, you could say. The Monadnock building, in that sense, contains one of the main fields of research in our practice. It's the representation and the perception of history and contemporaneity in architecture. So in the past there were more of these peaks in transition from one architectural language into the other, and caused by industrial or political reasons. These things are actually fueling or igniting that practice. So that's not only that has not only happened in Chicago, but also in Vienna, where you in the turn of the century, where you saw these moments with Hofmann and Loos, and later on also with Joseph Frank. And in general, when we talk about these examples or precedents, we also use them because of proven or forgotten status rather than a tool of justification for our design decisions. And if there is a method in our practice, then using these historical examples forms also a way of escaping the idea of doing inventions, rather than we rather seek for, let's say, continuity and passing on. Now, I've told you a bit about Chicago as we perceive it. Then we jumped over to Vienna. And we are in the Netherlands, in the polder, the wetlands, and and actually in Rotterdam. Now, in Rotterdam, we also find, let's say, similarities, you could say, with things that happens in more places in the world also. Well, let me first say that it's obvious that Rotterdam is, after the bombing of the Germans, the city was reinvented as a modern city with a modernistic layout. Actually, a new city based on infrastructure. We can still cross the city center by car very easily, which is very unusual for other Dutch cities. And when we talk about precedents, then I always have to show this group of buildings you see in the other image there on the right. You see, everything was bombed and was made modern, but there were also other buildings that were still existing of another, you could say, vocabulary, that were kind of forgotten. And that has to do with the fact that in the Netherlands, we seem to be very much in love with progress, and it leads almost to amnesia, or forgotten chapters in architectural history. For example, the eras before modernism, the Belle Époque problem, where the techniques of love for craftsmanship and decoration and even picturesque were much more elaborated and trained and usual, and that's something that has been forgotten, unfortunately. This is a very vivid tradition which is still there to be found in Rotterdam. And if you want, you could even read the city in a different way and see these buildings. And you can see that they have a vocabulary that relates to a completely different era. This is all done by Ad van der Steur, that's the architect that made the museum in Rotterdam, van Beuningen. But he also made very large-scale, at least for Rotterdam standards, large-scale buildings with all kinds of motifs, like this is almost a Venetian palace. This is a very strange corner building, or Scandinavian type of building, and he kind of used all kinds of examples throughout Europe and integrated them as motifs in his very urban buildings. Now, this is something that has been forgotten for a while, and now is being picked up again, and we appreciate it, fortunately. And that's a bit the thing we embrace as well, and also these kinds of buildings. Now, this is the wall in our office, and on this wall you can see examples of architects that are dead or are still alive. And we mix them up and treat them equally. We use we use these references as a fundament of images when we are at work, and you could say that sometimes they help us to solve problems, and sometimes they bring out new motives. Now it also relates. We also try to discover, you could say, relations and blood lines in history. And this is a small small sidestep. Bob has just mentioned it before. Sander was trained at NVRDV and I was trained at Rapp. And these offices have quite a strong formal vocabulary that relates then again, if you step one generation back to Hans Koolhof and Koolhaas. These two people actually, of course, represent total different universes, but at the same time, when you even go back further and realize that they were both, you could say, trained by Oemers, then that brings them together again as fellows. That shows a different path later in their career. I'm not saying that we are bridging this universe, but I could say that we feel quite comfortable in both universes, and we also understand them, I think. Now, another theme that I would like to talk about is making a little plans, which is obviously a sentence I will explain later, but I think it's good to tell you that in our practice that we create and reproduce architecture. That means that we make buildings, but also interiors, and also furniture, and also text, and also renderings, and also objects. We also educate. And all these products, you could say, are for us expressions of architecture. And some of them, they get realized, and some of them are not getting realized. And sometimes we know this before, and sometimes not. Sometimes that's painful, and sometimes it's not painful because we think that it's better that they don't get realized, that they remain a drawing. So it's not only the act of designing a building and guarding its realization that forms a valid expression of architecture. It's also including the act of drawing, making discourse, making models, and reflective writing. So it's actually the realm of ideas, metaphysics that form the fundament, and that sometimes leads to the realization of buildings. Now, and you could say that all these things are related. It's an ongoing research or field of interest. Think of a cloud or a group of topics that are loosely connected. And as an editor, we mentioned it before, of the OASE Journal of Architecture, I've worked on an issue called Codes and Continuities. We also try to make relations between a couple of not very well-known architects, I would say, and try to position them. That means writing and editing and publishing. There was also an issue of the rock, making models, good clients, but also we contribute to publication building upon building, where we contribute with the drawing only. We know that that's the only result. Sometimes we make a drawing like this, where we try to combine the work of other architects and make relations with important figures from the past. And you could say that these drawings help us to understand. Help us to understand the things that we are designing, and we're making relations that we could elaborate on further in a very light way. We do not necessarily need a building for that. Now, they help us thinking, you could say, in developing motives that we like to try and test further, like images like this. Now, I'm going to talk about this project quickly. That's an installation we once did for a festival. This installation was only there for 10 days, and it contains a quote of Daniel Burnham. For us, this is also a test ground, you could say. It was there for in the middle of the city center here. It's a very huge sign, and the public completely engaged with it. And because it was only there for 10 days, we could also be very bold and brutal. It was also allowed because of these 10 days. And normally we think of buildings for 2 years, and this was quite a challenge for us, because we could test the structure and could see how high it could become and how the public would interact with it. And the quote of Magnolia Plants also quite fitted quite well to the political situation in that moment in the Netherlands. I'm only showing this to explain that this is also part of how we think architecture could work, because it also kind of brings up new motives that help us thinking about buildings again. Now, the same goes for this exhibition design that we recently did for an exhibition named Designing the Surface, which was actually based on another exhibition design, a very small set of toolbox of objects, which we actually scaled up and brought to the proportions of pavilions, which then were made functional for showing all kinds of objects which relate to special surface treatments, but that's another story I will not elaborate on now. Then we did also a winning contribution to an ideas competition here in Chicago for a new architecture center. And this again, also when we lose competitions, it's actually not the ideas that get lost, because we will reuse them again. I'm tempted to tell more about this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to now switch to the first project I'm going to talk about a bit longer. That's the landmark project. This building was a competition that we did, a small competition. It's located in the south of the Netherlands, close to the German border, in a very small village called Ypenburg. This village is next to the river Maas. That's here. And Ypenburg is actually you could say the sister village of the small village called Bergen. Bergen is an old village along the Maas River, and New Bergen is a young village from the 60s. Which means actually that the complete layout of this new village was based on the idea of the car. So you have a central square, which is not a market square, but which is a parking lot. That's how we found it. And that actually required a restructuring of this village. So there was a project developer that did a proposal for restructuring this. And along with this restructuring, there was an idea and a fierce wish of the municipality to be visible on the horizon, because all the small villages in the surroundings, they had their own church and they were visible, not this new village in Bergen. So they included in the commission to make a landmark, a viewing point that would also provide a view of the national park around it. And it's a beautiful national park which attracts a lot of tourism. And what we first did was trying to figure out what a viewing point or a vertical tower, a tower-like structure could be, and what kind of roofs it could be, and whether it should be one form or whether it should be a collection of forms being and materials being stacked on top of each other, and what kind of silhouette it would make. So we first make a big collection of examples to orientate, to actually understand what the question is. Then of course we make a large amount of models to test what it could be. And we finally won the competition with this proposal, and which is a small house with a large chimney. The chimney actually contains a carousel with existing clocks that were there, and everybody seemed to be happy. The alderman, the municipality, the project developer, we were also satisfied, but not everybody, not the urban planner. He was not satisfied at all, because he actually wanted a big tower, not a small chimney. So then we had to save our commission, because we had just one and wanted to build it, of course. And then the commissioner said, yes, now you have to do an invention, architects, otherwise you lose the commissioner, because I have to reach an agreement with the urbanist, and it's the only solution is to change the design. So that forced us actually to reconsider the design and to change it. Now, the other thing that happened was that we could not rely anymore on the motive of making a small house with a large chimney. We had to actually study on typologies that would inform again the change of the building, but also it enabled us to understand the status of the building, because it's a symbol, it's an important building there in the center of the village. It needs to be visible like the churches, but it's a non-religious symbol, and it's also not the town hall of the village. So what would the status of this new landmark be? So we looked at buildings and found out that on the old Dutch market squares you have this trade building, and the trade building is always where historically where the trade took place, but there are also very strangely proportioned special buildings, small jewel boxes you could say, clad with very rich material, largely decorated, and they always were separated buildings with their own, you could say, type, and that type consists of a very high and large and dynamic ground level, and the first floor, which was more administrative, you could say. Then we thought, well, perhaps this is a typology that helps us to understand what the new landmark building should look like. Now, apart from that, we also studied some old towers, and we also understood that the project developer said that he would not like to make a big tower because that would actually mean that the tower should contain apartments, and the market in this small village was that everybody wanted a house with a garden. So apartments were not a real option. So we had to figure out a way to make a building that was not containing, which was high, not containing program, and could also look very massive. Now we looked at some of the old castle-like motifs, like a small tower on top of a tower, and we came up with this a new motif of making a more, you could say, dominant block, which was more proportioned, not like a small house, but like a more proud trade building typology. And on top of that, we stacked two boxes, one to step over to the other one, the highest one, and the highest one actually provided for the viewing point. Now, this is the logo or the scheme of the building. Next, so you can see the building of the volume. What was very important for us was that the two volumes would melt together and would form a very massive volume, and sometimes would completely open up. And we were also looking at an example like this, which for us is a very ridiculous building. I understood that it was burnt and that only the plinth is still standing, but what intrigued us very much was that you have a massive stone plinth, and on top of it you have a very tiny wooden house. This stacking of typologies is something which is very illusionary and intriguing, which helped us also to understand that something could be consisting of several things at the same time. And the contrast here was a bit too far to stack something which is wood on top of brick. I understand it from the perspective of construction. But for us, the contrast was too big, so we were seeking for something that would bring a bit more tension, because it would also need to act as one thing instead of two things stacked on top of each other. This is the result, like it is there today. And as you can see, we chose the same type of brick for the whole tower. It's actually a complete red brick. The whole building is made out of red brick. But it's covered with cement, greenish gray cement, slurry as you may call it. And we took away some of the slurry here and there in order to show the motifs and to start decorating or painting, if you like, and make distinctions and symbols of lintels and arches. And we also used patterns that we found in the environment, like the diagonal patterns you find also in other places, but this southeast province has quite a tradition of brick buildings and also decorated brick buildings, and we tried to learn from that. And it was clear that we wanted to make a very joyful, optimistic, almost party building, and so we made sure that that there was a certain optimism in this building. And at the same time, we wanted to connect with a more archaic use of brick as we found it in the environment. But it's a state as a part of this building, so it should not be like the town hall, which is next to it, and it should also not be like the new built houses, which you can see later in the presentation. For us, it was important to realize that this building was freestanding, so we needed to make every site representative, and this landmark building is containing, or was planning to, it was planned to contain a bar on the ground level, and let's say meeting or dining room on the first level. You would enter the bar on the ground level, and there you would walk up in an interior stair to the top level. They would step out of the low tower, and you would be on a balcony, and on this balcony you could look out over let's say the market square, and then you would step in the high tower, walk all the way up to spiral stair, and then on top you would only be able to look out over the landscape as the climax. And this, this is still actually in development. So after I think now 3 years that it has been realized, the municipality still did not succeed to find a good entrepreneur to make a good bar there. But actually, at the moment, there is someone who is working on that, and we hope it will open within a year. But we are a bit, let's say, ambiguous about that. On one hand, we like it to be part of the municipality, of the community actually, and on the other hand, it's a symbol, this tower. So we only hope that people are able to enter it and to make use of the viewing function, which you can just get the key at the town hall and then you can go up. But it's better if it's more open, of course, for everyone. Now, this is the plan. As you can see, we did quite a lot of efforts to organize it in such a way that it only contains 1/4. All the services and the rest is open. You could say this is solid. So a building that was once started and designed as a place to have a bar, but it should be open enough to also contain other functions. But it will probably really evolve into a bar at the moment. You can see the section here, the spiral stair going up. And these are the brick patterns. And as you can see, these are actually at a level of refinement to a building that has one theme of a grid going all the way around, making a face to each side in the surroundings. But this face is actually different. There are nuances in it, and these are caused by the changes in the patterns of the bricks. These are also caused by the changes in the windows, how we combine and position the windows. So on the market side, it has a bigger, the windows are combined, and you can see on the left. So you get a completely different figure than on the other sides where the windows are separated. And then the brick motifs, on the corners, they flip. So instead of red diagonals, you get green diagonals, and that's also repeated. So these are quite small nuances in the brickwork patterns that actually make every facade individual. And it also avoids that every side seems the same, and it's also avoiding that it's becoming too absolute in a way, where it contains a bit more nuancing and doubt perhaps, and also a bit more refinement. Now, this is something you will see on another picture, together with the whole development and restructuring of the site. We also saw that the other architect that was invited was talking a language of let's say traditional architecture that is to be found there, and we felt really the urge to step away from that, to avoid that we would be in the same type of language, because we thought that this building had a different status there. This is from the top, as you can see. We used a very exotic Brazilian bond here in order to avoid that the tower would be too massive. It provides light, you can look through the tower, and it also makes sure that the wind is not too dominant to this very slender structure. And here you can see the flipping of the bond from the red diagonals to the green diagonals. And this is what you can see on the top. All these peaks are the church towers of the buildings of the villages in the surroundings. And this is actually what it was like when it was under construction. And it also shows that, when it comes to irony, you could say that this is the inside of the tower. We were very much aware of the fact that it was only a symbol, and we also felt no hesitation in showing and treating it like that. So the tower is like a decor, it's like stage building in a way, and we also liked to elaborate on that idea. This is an metric. Here you can see how we also try to make the materiality of the building, make the building more touchable, and step away from the abstraction, treating the brick work in such a way that it recessed and that it had a certain plasticity without falling apart. So for us, that was constantly a balancing act of, you could say, something that could relate to collage and at the same time be in one massive form. And we spent quite a lot of time in researching the plasticity and the depth of the building by making plaster models. And well, this is a bit how it acts in its surroundings, and you can see still the, let's say, the original 60s buildings and the new inlay, which was done there. And our building is standing in between. We were also thinking of the interior. The new entrepreneur is probably not going to make use of this, unfortunately. Later we found out that in the village of Bergen, on the opposite of the provincial road, there's this tower standing, which is also an old church tower on the graveyard. And the beauty of this one is that it's a compilation of different local brick and stone types being stacked on top of each other, and of course that it's a beautiful ruin. Now, when we started showing the design to the people in the municipality, they were actually quite shocked. I think they were also. They thought it looked like a mosque, which surprised us in a way, because we used all kinds of local motifs. And now we notice that it attracts a lot of attention, and that makes them feel more committed and more proud. And we have the ambition that this landmark project could end up like a beautiful ruin, like the one we see over here. That's at least what we hope for. Now, I'm going to show another project. That's the Tachkemonischool factory. That's actually a project in 2 stages. First, I have to tell you a bit about this company. That's it's a company called Tachkemonischool, and it's one of the oldest companies in the Netherlands. It's the oldest company in the Netherlands. It's from 1572. It's a ceramics factory, and they originate from this small village of Makken. And we were first invited to make a design of for their factory building, which is actually just outside of the historical center, and it was actually a transformation of an existing factory building into a new building. And we have, I'm telling you this in a very fast way, we've studied, let's say, the shed type of buildings that are being used for factories, and then we try to make a family of buildings containing the same type of profile, which ended up in a building like this, containing the two colors of the clay, could say the basic material for all the ceramics that are made there. The brown clay before it's being baked in the ovens, and then the orange or red clay after the process of baking, heating up. Now this was a project that was in the beginning, taking place in the beginning of our office, and it was very clear that this was a utilitarian, technical production facility, which was a very fun commission to do and to work on. We really enjoyed it, and we also had nice conversations with the client, which is for us categorized as the educated client, because he was very aware of and very informed about design, and therefore he also involved us in this project. He wanted to step away from the usual factory and wanted to make it a bit more extraordinary. As you can see, it's a very it's a dirty and noisy environment with clay on the ground, and there was one sample room where all the architects wanted to go to see all the samples of the ceramic tiles that were produced there. And then here you can see the rest. And then he also had the client had a showroom in the center of the village, and he decided to stop with the showroom and to sell it. And then that meant that he invited us to make the showroom and the offices in the existing factory. So he sold the ground and invited us to make a facility for his total company, and also to let's say to welcome his clients. Now, what first started as something which was hard and technical, then all of a sudden needed to be representative and you could say even soft. So we actually took a look at the decoration that we found in the works of Singel, where you see this tent room. So you have to imagine that you have a country house, and in this country house there's one room which is a tent room, or a tent room, which is completely cladded with textile, even the ceiling. And I understood at first I thought it was meant to, let's say, increase the feeling of being outside, but like you are in a tent, but I also understood that it referred to the military tradition of sleeping in tents. What attracted us in this image is that with only one material you could actually make the illusion of something completely else. It covers everything of the structure, of the existing structure. So we took this as a motive for the design of a new environment in the existing factory hall. So what we did was the offices and the meeting rooms were implemented, and there was a new entrance made on the first level by the introduction of big stairs. And then the whole ceiling was covered with white translucent textile and pyramids in such a way that they would bring in the light and also diffuse the light, and that they would also cover all the technical stuff that was needed to let the offices function. Divided it into 3 zones, you could say here. And each zone has its own type of tent or pyramid. This is the stairs, as you can see. It's a grand stair. You should really feel welcome here. And these are some models that we did. this is the result of these 10 structures. Now, the good thing we think of this is that the light is behind it, so you don't see individual lights, but also the ventilation is hidden. It takes place through the cloth, through the textile, because it's the same material that's being used for these ventilation pipes made out of textile. And that was for us, you could say, an invention, and that makes it also possible that all these annoying things are hidden. And it also makes it possible that you have a complete, you could say, an illusion, because it completely hides the interior and the raw material of the factory, and makes it into a very soft and welcoming environment, which is more warm, and you can even say, like I said, softer, because the floor is cladded with carpet, and the cabinets we've designed as well. We've looked at these beautiful cabinets made by Joseph Frank, where you can see that the blocks of such a cabinet are lifted and put on legs, very slender legs. That's something we did as well to actually provide for continuity of the floor space. And it also provides for you could say, a situation where when you have to work, you dive behind the cabinet, and they're completely covered with felt, which has a good noise absorption. Now, the last project I would like to talk about is the Atlas House, which deals with texture. This is called, this is a relatively new project. This has just been finished, and we start to publish it. And for us it was a very a nice project to work on, because we have here two clients that wanted to have a very cheap and big house. So that was in a way a good challenge. And we proposed two things. They bought quite a small plot, and they wanted to have a bit of green there. So we said either we can make a patio house on one floor with a central opening where you can put some vegetation like a tree, but we cover the complete plot with your house. Or we make a very, very, very minimalized footprint, and we organize the building in a vertical way. And by organizing it in a vertical way, you have some space around your house where you could still have the experience of a garden, but for total privacy, you should go up to your roof terrace, because you have to imagine that there will be neighbors that will be looking into your garden. But at least you can have some space there. Now they chose for this option for the, let's say, tower house, as we call it, and organized the house in a vertical way. For us it was a challenge to search for a material that was relatively cheap, like a brick, a ceramic brick, which would be usable for the inside and for the outside, and that could actually solve almost everything and all the problems that we met. And we thought if we keep the inside of the building a bit uncovered and raw, the clients could do the finishing themselves later. But we also fell in love with the rawness of this material. Now, I have to tell you a bit more about the context. This plot was located on the edge of a beautiful old estate, which was owned by the family of Philips, the electronics company in Eindhoven. The founder of this company was actually living there on the estate for many years. And it's a beautiful old estate with beautiful old trees. And we proposed to turn the house a bit, 45 degrees, in order to give more view along the estate, to avoid that the view of the trees that were there, the crowns of the trees, would end up like you could say a flat painting in a way. And this turning of the house also made it, you could say, more individual towards its neighbors. It's actually a very simple ground plan with almost every floor is the same. You have 2 rooms that are connected through a very large opening. The first ground level is where the studio was, and then on the second level, that's where the place where they live, where the kitchen is, and on the top level is another working space and sleeping space. And then you see the big roof terrace. Now, it's clear that there's a division between serving and served spaces, and there's a grand stair in the middle. But you could say the big surprise is perhaps in this section that every room has its individual height and changes, and that makes that every room has a different atmosphere, and they are all connected to each other because these rooms are very narrow. But that's the main, let's say, concept of the house. That it's a collection of rooms being linked together, and these rooms they always have these. They meet the windows, and the windows tell their own story in a way. So sometimes the window is high, and sometimes the window is low. Of course, we try to research and to grab this by drawing it and to understand what the differences do in height. You have to imagine that this room, this is the main living room that's 4 meters high, which is for the standards quite high. And that's linked with an interior window towards the kitchen, so you have to walk around to reach the kitchen, but you still have contact here, while the other rooms are connected by very large openings. And during the process, we started with the idea if we use the same material for the inside and the outside, that will be rather cheap, but then of course we were a bit naive because we found out that it is actually much more let's say, work, and it requires much more concentration to also control the interior then, because we cannot make any mistakes because everything will be visible. So we wanted the interior to be as beautiful as the exterior, of course. So that meant that we had to draw all the walls of the interior as well. And then we had to think of all the electricity and every position of everything, you could actually say, except for the furniture, which was, of course, for the owners, for the clients. This is the result as it was realized. Without neighbors, I think the neighbors are already building now, so in a while this building will have friends, I hope. As you can see, for us the turning of the house was very important. 40 to 45 degrees was a very important gesture also to treat the volume, because this brick building of red brick made it quite a massive block, and for us it was really challenging to actually put more, to make the windows of the corners more dominant, make the corners more dominant by placing the windows in these corners. And therefore, you could say that the massivity was placed more into the center of the block, as you can see here. And it would actually allow you also to almost look through the building. That's something you can see here. So also here, the building is coherent in its treatment of material on every side. Yet every side of the building has its own face and makes a different gesture, you could say. These are impressions showing that there are still a couple of things coming up, like a balcony here and a roof at the front door. And here you can see that it's completely opening up of the corners. Now, and here, by the jumping of the windows, you can easily see that every side of the building individualizes. Yet at the same time, it's a coherent block. For us, it was also let's say, a challenge to limit ourselves, and that's, you could say, that has a relation with the earlier project I showed, the landmark building, because this building we tried to solve everything with only one gesture, with painting the building. And this painting actually could give a meaning to the building, could actually introduce motifs. As you could also see, as we found, of course, in many other architects' work, but Gottfried Semper actually made quite a large description of the usage of color. And but we also liked the idea of painting and also texture, because it's, for us, it's part of the family of pleasure principles, you could say, in architecture. Ornament, decoration, use of color, and it helps us to make to embellish or make the building beautiful. It's not very important to make distinction between these principles, I think, but for us it's important to think of decorations as a possibility for and as to oppose the more abstract and minimalist architecture. We actually are not so interested in solely abstraction. This is actually decoration and texture is helping us to step away from the sereneness of making very impersonal spaces, you could say. We think that's something that an architect should avoid, and we also think that architects should more, let's say, embrace the idea of coziness and banality. Of course, these decorations require some coding, and they refer to classical motifs. Now, that was also for us an important thing. In the Dutch tradition, you have the neo-Renaissance buildings that were made out of brick, and due to, I would say, people were proud of their buildings, but they didn't want to spend too much money on them, so the decorations were not made with marble or natural stone, limestone types. Sometimes they were, but in a lot of cases, the red brick in this tradition, the red brick was just painted or plastered in motifs like keystone motifs or horizontal bands or guirlandes, all kinds of motifs that were just painted on the ceiling, and we were very much intrigued by that, by these motifs. So we looked at them and studied them, and that actually caused some keystones here and there, but sometimes not necessarily a keystone. Sometimes they step away. We spend a lot of time on studying the type of joints, because if they would be flush with the bricks, they would kind of disappear, and then the whole surface of the building would become too abstract. While this painting also provided for a classical distinction between a plinth, which is more heavy, and a more light top, which makes it a bit more ephemeral and a bit more perhaps even textile or cloth-like. And we even then pulled up the corners, you could say, to also step away from the box. Now the painting also is stressed by not covering the depths of the windows, where it acts almost as a decoration, where you can see that it's the horizontal lines start to interact. Now these joints are bulking out, and then we have a special term for that in the Netherlands. But it's also obvious that we were very much intrigued by the thing that Venturi is doing here, where the painting of a surface is actually disconnected from the building that is behind it, which actually tells a different story in a way, or emphasizes the parts that we thought were interesting or more vital to the project. Well, this is a view of the interior, where you can see how we actually also designed all these parts, electricity, plugs. And the client promised us not to paint the interior. I think he, because he liked it, they liked it so much. I think he now only painted one room, the bedroom, with a bit of white, which is actually quite beautiful as well. But the rest of the house is still like this, in a large brick block, large size, I mean. And you can see that sometimes it looks a bit raw, but in many cases it actually works quite fine. And because of this treatment of the windows being pushed together in the corner, you almost get a bay window in the corner, which really provides the idea of being almost standing in the forest there. I'd like to thank you. We could not have done this work without the help of these people that have been working with us the last 10 years. Thank you very much. We are very much open to questions if you have them.
Really quick, one day question.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to talk about the brick being revealed as the graphics of the light color. What you didn't talk so much about is the doors, mullions, and sill choice, the gold in the tower and green in the house.
Yeah.
That seems like where the decorative choice comes in.
Yeah. We noticed that if you choose these colors that are, let's say, very in the same tone of the brickwork, that you almost ignore the complete layer of window frames, while they actually have a very vital and vivid role in making the graphical appearance, but also indeed in the richness of the whole project. So therefore, we the landmark building we really chose indeed deliberately a very let's say bright and we call it optimistic color to emphasize the special status of this building, and we tried to avoid to make it too conventional in a way by choosing a detail type of the window frames that make it more flush, which I think is a very contemporary treatment of that, instead of making all the recesses and depths in the windows. And it then also starts to act as a separate layer in the total composition of the building. Now, I would say that the same motive goes for the last building, the Atlas House, where we started with even more bright colors, brighter green, but we were also a bit afraid that it became too bright. And I have to say that we test a lot of these colors too, and it's only, I would say, quite recent that we start to discover the strength of this layer as a graphical tool that completely influences the whole appearance. And also in the Atlas House there is a notion of using this dark green immediately brings up the idea of Olorosi, for example, but at the same time this detailing of the window is very slender. That takes it away again from that. So that's also a deliberate play we seek and also step away from again. I think that's about it. Yes.
So if you could say a word about the role that time plays in the understanding of your buildings, because it seems like it plays a few different roles. I mean, one, you talked about the potential of understanding of the ruin or something like that. But then there's also the sort of relationship between the absolute and the idiosyncratic in your project that seems like it's almost undergone a process of transformation or a process of layering. Then there's also, it seems like the way you turn corners requires a certain amount of extended sort of experience of the building to understand some of those moves. And I'm wondering, do you understand your buildings to be sort of read in those terms, like over time, or is it about understanding the process? Like, how do you see the role of time in the reception and understanding of and then even in your design process?
Well, there were a couple of buildings that besides the Monadnock building, there are a couple of buildings that managed to be hard to frame in time-wise. So, for example, in Amsterdam you have the Piraeus building, which is designed by Aalst, which was for us a very important building because it's not. It was not very clear whether it was an old or new building. Now, this tension is something that intrigues us, and I think that's also what we try to obtain, that the building should actually not immediately act as something which is crisp and new, but could also act as something which is there, or was there, but not quite. And that's a tension which I cannot, or don't even want to explain completely, but I think it's something that you can find in the as a motive that we try to obtain. The other thing that relates to it, perhaps, is that that means that it starts to question conventions, I think. So some of the examples that we use, it would be more logical to, for example, to make a more rational building with the windows all on the same level. But I would say then this tension would be lost, that we actually now think is being obtained by these shifts in the windows, and it's not showing a process. It's more a tension between a coherent block, which is then questioned in a way. Could it also be a collage of things instead of only a massive block? And I would say that's something we start to explore more and more. I'm also a bit hesitating to go into this idea of picturesque or bricolage, where you see that the buildings are working like a collage of things, because therefore we are perhaps too much in love with the rational, non-intuitional approach, where we were both trained in that the emblem of the figured ground is also an important element that we feel also very tied to. And if you step away too far from that, then this ground plan becomes a mess when it's only you could say the composition which is dominant. You end up with an unreadable plan. We're not. Perhaps this will happen in the future, but we're not there yet, and I'm not sure whether we will end up there. I think that was your second question, and that time, or second part of your question, and I think about time, that was the first part. Any other questions? Yes.
In the last house you showed, seems like in one of the two of the rooms that are separated by like a big steps, and there's no steps there. There seems like there's a piece of furniture that acted as a step.
Yeah.
I was wondering what was the thinking behind that, or the effect of.
Well, to make it readable as a collection of rooms, you have to individualize these rooms, and individualizing rooms means that the transition of one room to the other room needs to be very apparent, very dominant. And you can do this by making a door, but sometimes a door or a window, and sometimes it's just not enough. You have to make the opening bigger. And then you have to use other tools, like a big step, for example, or jump in the ceiling to make this individuality very clear. Yeah. But it indeed requires a helping element, like furniture. Yeah. Yes?
This may be a question for Sandra, but when you reference precedents, you discuss architects like Brown, Rossi, but also that may be influencing either the sort of design of the surface or the materials of the building, but also the volumetric forms. But you also are talking about your position within a genealogy of other architects, being Kohlhoff and Kohlhaas, and your connection to Kohlhaas is kind of unclear to me, and I'm just wondering what your answer for that question would be.
I'm going to talk about that. Well, well, first, I of course try to make a point that in quite a large part of both the careers of these two guys, they were on the same page, I would say. It's only after the fall of the wall in the 90s that Kohlhoff took a path which is, well, you could say, super traditional, and where he also kind of lost his interest in the yeah, he would not agree with me, but in the contemporary discourse, you could say, or how to relate to contemporaries in architecture. And well, he has a very clear answer to that it doesn't exist. But I don't agree with that, and I also think that that the other way around, that Koolhaas is perhaps a bit over the top in his seeking for progression. So, but I think that recently we kind of rediscovered his the richness of the first decade of OMA, where all kinds of inventions were done, not only on the level of proposals for buildings, but also in graphical representation and also in the uses of models in how they informed the design process. But I also have to say there are building proposals, for example, for the town hall in The Hague. I think this was a very inspiring period, and for us it's something that we make use of. We study this, we look at these proposals, and we also more and more start to understand the intentions. And we did not understand it for quite a while. We only recently understood when it was demolished the Dance Theatre as something which was actually a sort of collage of building parts being put together to kind of avoid making a very large volume in the city, but to almost make a building that disappeared in the city. Now these ideas are on a certain abstract level are very appealing to us, and we like to to study them and to make use of them. Also because we have the feeling that they relate back to a source, which is, yeah, you could say mutual, where, yeah, I don't know, you see some of these proposals of Koolhof, Pol, for example. I don't know if you know this proposal, where you see condensed, a city condensed into one building, which are motives that are similar to the work of OMA. And I think, in a way, yeah, therefore we dare to also use this name, because they, yeah, it's also a source of inspiration. Yeah, yeah. Yes, I expected a question from you.
It was a pleasure to have you here. Well, can I answer to your
Yes.
question?
Yes, of course. Yes.
I believe that you have it in your blood, in the sense that, first of all, the name of your office is the name of a sort of natural monument. I mean, the Monadnock is a sort of natural, it's a geological monument, right? You began your presentation on that. Colors, famously established the idea of monumentality to the sub-monument, the out monument, the sketch paper to the big monument. And Koolhof is the master monument, the Colossus, Nantes, and both of them are sons of Ungers, which is basically the god of monument. So actually my question was, before Paul preceded me, was what is your idea of monument? Because I really love your square project. Having lived in the Netherlands for a long time, I know what that kind of square could mean in that society. But at the same time, I also question what does it mean to do a landmark? You call it as a landmark, or a sign, you use landmark, signboard, monument. So I was wondering, since I know your roots in Boston, what is your idea of monumentality? Knowing that I guess it's precisely on monument that Monadnock can play a relation between color and color. And I love to say when I saw that the tower there and that is an empty tower is a sort of graphical piece. And also knowing that there was supposed to be a bar, but actually it's empty. It's like a Sironi painting, like a Rossi. So I don't know if you could elaborate more, maybe if you have a specific concept now, because also you have other projects you didn't show, like Austerlitz, another urban kind of main square type, or the famous historical natural history museum that you didn't show. So all these are kind of monumental projects. So I was wondering if you elaborate your definition of monument.
I'm not able to give a definition of a monument, but I can say a couple of things about it. And one of the things is that if you are interested in a collective language in architecture, that you have to make use of symbols and codes, I think the usage of these elements, of these symbols and codes, are immediately bringing a certain monumentality into play, which is good, because I think that's what we need in architecture, to find a language where step one is that we understand each other as architects, that we can read the intentions, and that we find a collective language. And step two is that we are then also able to explain it to more people than only architects, because people understand the building as something that has been there, perhaps, and that's referring to the question of time, that has been around for a while. And I think monumentality helps with that. Not necessarily, we don't understand monumentality as something that tries to dominate or to impress, but it does, of course, help to make the things, small things important, like this landmark building. I have to say that I have to give it a longer thought how this relates to Koolhof and Koolhaas, and relates to our practice in that case. But we, let's say, we completely are aware of the tweaking of proportions, and therefore, which actually then evolving into a more monumental status of a project. And sometimes we deliberately do it. For example, we used this recent competition we did on the Market Square in Groningen, the northern city in the Netherlands, where we put a lot of emphasis on the facade that was facing the market. And we did this for urban reasons, to actually emphasize the importance of the market square. And for that you sometimes need, we really in a very operational way then make use of this monumentality. And probably it also honestly comes as something we were just trained in intuitively. I mean that we've just taken we've just had a lot of examples from Germany, for example, where this brick tradition is also causing a public language of architecture, which is always relating to some kind of monumentality, to find a certain collectiveness. Yes?
How do you think through subtlety in that there are certain things that you do in some of the projects where the changes are quite subtle? Specifically, I'm
testing a lot. That's the simple answer. I mean, we test. Yeah, I cannot show you now, but we tested, I think, something like 200 variants of the elevations and also of the curve in the roof line. Because we've noticed that only by testing we can find it out, and only by observing it. So that's the only way to reach subtlety and to first reach the point where it's too much, and then reach the point where it's harmless. So it should be somewhere in between. Yeah.
Maybe that's where the whole house comes in. You have to do 200 iterations of it to get it right. Instead of just, hanging around with it.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I noticed that I have one.
Yeah, good. Please.
You talk about irony, and I get the first generation of irony in the 60s, but I'm wondering what is that, when you quote irony, does it no longer become ironic, or does it become earnest again?
Yeah, we struggle a bit with this. We first, I will contextualize it a bit. We like the work of Hummers and Rossi a lot, but we are also simultaneously disappointed by their treatment of the buildings in their materialization. They're actually more graphical models in a way, and then they don't add new layers when you look at the representation and the way they have been built. And that's something we try to avoid. That's one thing. And that in a way relates perhaps to something like postmodernism, where we also see architects being so much in love with the image, the composition of the building, stepping away from the idea of materialization and also the joy of that part of the building process, the process of architecture. That for us this is almost cynical, and therefore we were searching for the right word when you are being, let's say, deliberately dishonest. And that's a balancing act between skepticism, being cynical, or being ironical. And for us, the big difference with postmodernist architecture is that most of that is quite cynical. Of course, there are exceptions, but I think the irony is where it's still being, we can still, humor, where it's still for fun in a way, and it's still a light wink. But in that we are indeed very earnest. Yes, of course. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I just want to ask about the different aspects of the practice, the lighting, the editing, the designing, and buildings. I'm just wondering how you control all those aspects, and do you think as you get presumably busier building and designing that some of those other parts of the practice will shrink or even fall off?
I cannot answer that because I have now the feeling that they are really helpful. And as soon as they lose that function, indeed, then we will not be involved in these parts. But for us, being involved in the offices where we were working in projects of 2, 3, 4 years, it was really refreshing to have a commission for a beach pavilion which only took 3 months, or an installation which was only there for 10 days, or an exhibition design which is also there for half a year. It allows you to make mistakes, to test, to do experiments, and in that sense it really helps us to understand how we like to make buildings which are there for a longer time. And the same goes for writing a text. It's stepping away from the daily practice. I think it really takes, it's really hard for us to write, so it's really like an architectural project in itself, because you really have to bend your mind into words instead of visuals. So I see, yeah, also the making of a book is something that yeah, we like to do, but perhaps the frequency is not going to be the same. In the end, indeed, we are most involved with realizing a building. That's true. But these are.
Are you specifically referring to scale?
No, just like a balancing act, or how you prioritize, because anyway, some of them are, writing is slow, or, the installation up for 10 days is quick and hectic, and so they, in terms of measuring ones,
Yeah. But you also have to understand that if you work for, on the tower project, we have been working on it for 4 years, the landmark, and, but not continuously, yeah, of course, but there were quite big gaps, and then it's really nice to have a short project in between, like an exhibition design or an installation. It really keeps you alive, so to say, mentally, I mean. So I think this is something that I can see continuing here.
Just a curious question, kind of a follow-up to Bob's. The undulation or oscillation that you described, earnestness, irony, like, do you guys read like meta-modernist essays and follow that line of conversation?
Sorry, of what?
Meta-modernism is kind of line of essays that are coming out
No.
in 2010 that kind of perfectly aligns, and I think it comes from the world.
Oh, interesting.
No, there's that sensibility of incorporating hot and cold and not allowing it to even out. And for the work to always be fleeting, but always be accessible in a way, it seems the one. And it's essentially an argument about aesthetics.
Oh, I'd like to learn more about it. No, that's completely new. I mean, we have now the experience that people start questioning us about postmodernism, and we did not really think of that a lot. The only thing is that we noticed that this was a time where thinking about precedents and tradition and convention in architecture was completely normal, and we were a bit surprised that we lost it the years after. Perhaps it was too exuberant or too exotic or too over the top. I can also understand that for a couple of examples. But at the same time, it was a very rich discourse, I think, when I was making these catalogs of the Venice Biennial. And I have the feeling that this was a rich debate where a lot of different things could happen at the same time. And then, at least in the Netherlands, when the super Dutch school became so dominant, it was super successful, and it was good for Dutch architecture, you could say, but at the same time it kind of vanished or flattened the whole discourse in a way, because there was only one dominant way to go, and that was I'm very happy that we find pals throughout Europe, but also here, that understand or have a different understanding of that and are not necessarily so mono-minded. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.